Hello, good morning. You're watching QTV this morning. I am Ibrahim Abalde. It's good to be here. How is your public holiday going? And of course, I hope you're having a very good time. And we are happy to be back in the studios of QTV Gambia. We are broadcasting from West Africa. And I am with Lolly. I'm in left half of Julde.
Yeah, I know.
Lolly, how are you?
I'm okay. Just a bit sleepy.
Sleepy?
Still sleepy.
So how was yesterday? You had a good time?
Yes, I had a good time. It was really fun. Alhamdulillah, everything
And
went
a
well.
blessed nikah to our colleague Jennifer
Yes.
Sonko. She's off the market.
Of course, yes, he's just off the market.
Finally.
Finally.
You know?
Yes, he was so happy, all smiley yesterday.
Yes, at least he will go and experience, the house, the marriage life. I mean, maybe if she comes on the platform again, she would be able to tell us the difference.
Hey!
Again, I know she will be very lousy. I mean, she will be very...
Mr. Abel,
imagine Jennifer doing her marital rights, I mean, in the house, doing housekeeping, what she have to do.
I can't wait to hear all about it.
That's going to be a lot of commotion, you know. So happy marriage to Janaba and Omar Jaju. You know, I wish you a very, happy marriage. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with all that you aspire for in your marriage house. Yeah, so our newspaper review guest is no other than Usman Toure. Usman is not a new face in the Gambia televisions. I mean, you can see Usman advocate for a lot of things, especially Africa, on how Africans should believe in themselves. And of course, you know, be self-sufficient, you know, to be able to stand on their own. Mr. Toure, it's good to have you on this platform.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to a very constructive discussion with you and with also your dear audience out there.
Absolutely. I mean, what have you been up to? We've not been hearing from you. We've not been seeing you. You travel?
Yeah, so I spent most part of last year and even year before last outside of the Gambia. I came in also around December last year, but then it's been in and out.
In and out.
So this is basically my first media engagement in over a year.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, interesting. So we would be engaging you on the African code. From there, we'll do the newspaper review. And Mr. Adedrame will be joining the platform as well. And we'll be discussing Africa Liberation Day, I mean, which is a very significant day. We have to know whether Africa is liberated or not. And of course, Mr. Ade said, no, don't call it Africa Liberation Day. It's Africa Day. Now, so we will definitely delve into that. But first, what we have to do, we will go straight to the African code. It reads, when cat and mouse make an alliance, shopkeeper, watch your wares. You know, this is what it reads. When cat and mouse make an alliance, shopkeeper, watch your wares. You know. It's from Egypt.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting proverb. A cows and a mice forming an alliance. Yeah. So I think the third party, who's the shopkeeper, should really watch out. Should be on the guard, because two enemies coming together, something fishy there.
So, Mr. Toure, what is your interpretation of this African code from your understanding?
Well, it's two entities or two enemies coming from completely two different angles, who are often not seen together. So when they do so, then it means there's a big issue ahead.
Absolutely.
And it just means that it requires an extraordinary preparation to defeat such an alliance. So I think it's about care. It's also for the shopkeeper or anyone else to reflect on such a time. And also prepare for any casualties or anything.
Yeah, I think that's true. The moral lesson here for me is, seeing two enemies suddenly coming together, you should really be understand, but you should be alerted for anything, because they are up to no good. So yeah, for me, that is my simple interpretation.
Well, in fact, I mean, Did you realize a cat and a mouse coming together? Because a cat and a mouse, they are not friends. Absolutely, they are total enemies.
So this is why we say the enemies coming together.
Them coming together. So it's telling you there are situations that, you know, we must try to compromise, you understand, for us to be successful. I mean, there is no need for us to fight. I mean, let's filter this down to how we live as a continent. I mean, despite our difference, we are Africans. At some point, we want to achieve one goal. So therefore, we all need to come together. But it is a very difficult one. It is reminding me of the free movement of goods and people within Africa, you know, which is, I mean, we talk about it all the time, the Africa trade, but it is as difficult, you know, as crazy, because at some point you want to move goods to Senegal or Guinea-Conakry, Guinea-Bissau, you find it very difficult, I mean, to do that. At some point, where is that alliance that we're talking about, Mr. Toure?
Yeah, thank you so much. So when you reflect on free movement of people and goods, it is first built on a social cohesion. Like, people must have to accept one another. And two, there has to be an infrastructure that supports such a belief or such a, you know, policy. Now, in our context, that is what we do not have. Often, our politicians would meet in Addis Ababa and have this kind of discussion that, okay, we are open, we are doing this, we are doing that. But those speeches don't reflect in crossing borders. And I have experience traveling around Africa, but not only that, moving goods also across Africa. And you would realize that not only is the infrastructure not there, but even the will. We go through a lot among custom officers.
Absolutely.
Where we shipped a container from Dakar to Nigeria. And you know, it just took 3 days. But clearing it from the port took us almost a month. And so this tells you a lot about, you know, the infrastructural deficit, but as well as, you know, the political will. Most of the things that is said is not at the implementation.
Exactly.
Sometimes you even wonder if those at the borders are really, you know, communicating with the leaders in you know, capitals, and the list goes on. So yes, Africa or the continental.
Kiusel moy suñu boss. Kiusel moy suñu boss. Kiusel moy suñu boss. Soro go ebe dawa full network suda tili Kiusel ni lafta diamla wati jamala mune diata Kiusel most reliable network dumala geta wati Kiusel wo quality man nyon soto jam ona manke Kiusel hanibe wulo ni farole kono walante be bako na jala fayola network ko se taria Kiusel suñu boss ñofi njeka indi 3G ñu delu taxi 4G plus and now we bring you 5G 5G first and only 5G provider suñu boss itela follow adi doron nesa keno suñu boss Gambia bela nyon tawo fele Kiusel suñu boss ko fason tawo buka busi Kiusel suñu boss itela molti milka kukutol nati Gambia Kiusel meta lori la kilianol yele imanyina amanda wala itela ka quality dila dadi ma itele silo wala wodol mume be keno ma Kiusel suñu boss Kiusel suñu boss Kiusel suñu boss Kiusel suñu boss connect solo be bambandi Kiusel suñu boss Kiusel most innovative Kiusel suñu boss
Kiwmoni arti webi nafitora gol no yawi te non kadi no moƴƴi Kiwmoni a wawa wadde piiji ɗin fow kala ko wonɗa wattu kala a wawa hendade mbuuɗi maɗin e o Kiwmoni app ke song a wawa nattinde mbuuɗi ma ɗum yaltina soda credit soda Q power soda ko falada te non kadi wawa en yobude himbe e ko heewi ida wawi kadi nuldude Q money yoba bilji madi te non kadi hendoda mbudi ko yasi nulda himbe kadi mbudi fi nafitoragol dum no weebi yahu ka Play Store ma dum ka App Store fi wawa fuddade fi hebugol hen ko laabi noddu Q money customer care e 133 Q money suñu kalpe minen nguditi lawol si wobbe jokki Q money e murundana ne koteke anila ni mobile app sone yaringo alanna yata ndum e se kuol bekeno ibe dawoda wati ise muna fanno ila kodola anin Q money la ni mobile app kuto ise kodo dundino ye kodo fintinde ise credit ko sanno ye Q power sang ye fengol sang ndum fanan ise mol jono anin ku jamalu ise Q money kino yela bilol jo ndum fanan bantala banko se kodo kiyeno ise kodo fanan kino do kotenge pour que muna fanyina a download sign Play Store anin App Store ni la taka Serengo sotoje Q money customer care commandi 133 Q money suñu kalpe ntolle nga silo walang dole mol noma
Taking a break isn't about stopping, it's about recharging for the next stage. Welcome to our oasis.
Powered by Africa, Oris Energies.
Q money delsina ak sen mobile app bu bes bi orna gawna te it mun nga ko jëfandikoo pour def ci lo bëgga fo mun di ne waxtu bu ne mun nga jot sa xaalis ak Q money mobile app bu bes bi mun nga dugal xaalis génné xaalis jënd ci crédit jënd ci Q power jënd lo bëgga ak yu bari mun nga ci yónnee Q money fay sa bill si jot xaalis bitim réew yónnee xaalis ci noo ko bëggee looy def yomba na downloadal app bi léegi ca Play Store bu dul loolu App Store pour nga door pour am si lu leer koolal Q money customer care si 133 Q money suñu kalpe ñoo xaali yoon wi ñeneen toppa
Oryx Service. Top teamwork for top performance.
Powered by Africa, Oris Energies.
Wow, Sadio, ça va? Ça va bien dire.
Oryx, with you all the way.
Powered by Africa, Oris Energies.
QMoney is back again with its easy-to-use, secure and convenient mobile app that allows you to carry out all your transactions. No matter where you are or what time it is, you can always access your funds. With the new QMoney app, you can cash in and out, buy credit, buy Q Power, shop, make payments, and so much more. You can also send Q money, pay bills, receive international remittances, and transfer cash to others. Just download the app from your Play Store or App Store and get started. For more information, call customer care on 133. Q Money, Sinu Kalpe.
We are back. You're watching QTV this morning. We apologize for that long break. We were sorting one or two things in the studio. So, Mr. Toure, you were delving on a very important point about the Africa free movement of people. Sometimes the political will and the connection when it comes to relating this information. Sometimes you tend to think, okay, these people, I think they are not communicating properly. Because if at all there is a law, allow Gambian products or allow Gambians to move about from one place to another within the Africa bloc. I mean, at some point you start having problems when traveling with your goods. I mean, sometimes you tend to think, what is the situation?
Yeah, so just as I was delving into, it's an infrastructure problem, but also a political will issue. Now, number one, even for the movement of people, having connecting flights alone within the African continent is a big problem.
Nightmare.
I mean, for someone that is leaving the Gambia to East Africa, you're most likely gonna stop in about 4 to 5 different countries before you get to your final destination. And not only that sometimes, but also the price, just the cost of traveling. Now, that is just on one side. Again, the infrastructural deficit. For instance, if you're somebody doing production in the Gambia and then you want to sell your products into Kenya, if you're using an air freight, most likely that product is going to leave the Gambia, get to Europe or Dubai or China before it goes to East Africa or before it even goes to another West African country. Now, this is the same thing even with shipping. For those that do container group A and things like that, if you are sending in products now from the Gambia to Kenya, and then you want to do it in groups, how many Gambian entrepreneurs are sending products to Kenya? Maybe very few. So you are forced to use an air cargo or to put it in a container to Dubai or to Morocco or sometimes to China before it gets to Kenya. So as a young entrepreneur who is navigating this, it appears as if the free trade is a myth than a reality.
Absolutely.
And with all these things, now you have the issue of the restrictions in general, the lack of political will. And again, remember, as a Gambian going to Senegal alone, you're forced to change your currency to survive in Senegal. This is almost one country. And that is it across the African continent. You are dealing with almost 30 plus currencies. So this does not really support freedom of movement for people, for goods. And I think the African politics needs to be tailored in this reality. Make our development more of like, developmental within the continent rather than extract. Almost every port across the African continent is connected directly to Europe or Asia, but they are not connected like within ourselves. There are no railways connecting us. There are no shipping lines that are going just within the African
You will
coast.
have to go through the long route.
Exactly. So you're forced to use route, and sometimes what you have is, I know a friend who was just sending a vehicle from the Gambia to Cameroon. It took 4 months to get there. Now, so these are some realities that people go with on a daily basis, and unless and until that is defeated, the free movement of people and goods is just a mere talk.
Exactly. So, Mr. Ade, what is your own, point of view?
Well,
when it comes to
we've
this?
kind of gone off the topic of
Yeah.
the shopkeeper. So if I give a very brief one, if you imagine that the shopkeeper was Yaya Jammeh, and then the cat and the mouse was the coalition, they unseated him. Those people, they were not friends. They were actually enemies themselves. But they had a common cause, and they came together. And the shopkeeper, who should have been aware, was Yaya Jammeh, and completely taken unawares. In 100 years, he didn't think he would have been unseated by those means, by the ballot box. But so that's just quickly to deal with. But as we've gone into the kind of wider Africa Day thing, yesterday I spent most of the day watching TV around Africa, Burkina Faso, Cabo Verde. That one was really interesting because in Cabo Verde they had all the ambassadors get together, and then you had people from as many African countries as they could get together to exhibit things about their country, including the food, the clothing, culture, dance, music, and so on. And then at the end, they had all the ambassadors on stage dancing to Jerusalem. It was quite funny.
Wow.
It was good. But, to pick up what Usman has said, I think there's always been the kind of rhetoric, and as he said, it's more a myth than a reality. This kind of Africa that we want to see. And I think some of our leaders, their ambition is there. Some of them, they have the real ambition. People like Kwame Nkrumah, when he called that meeting in 1958, which kind of led eventually to this, what we now, although the date was subsequently changed. He had this real ambition and this vision of a kind of united Africa. Almost a kind of United States of Africa, if you will. But subsequently, self-interest has kind of defeated it.
Yeah, it overshadowed.
So as Usman said, you know, by now we should have road networks that stretch across the continent, east, west, north, south, and somewhere you connect. There should be rail networks. We criticize the colonial people for all sorts of things, but back in the day, there was a shipping line called the Elder Dempster Line, and it used to go along the coast of West Africa. It was a British one. You know, when we became independent, why didn't somebody say, okay, let's take over that route from the Elder Dempster Line? My own grandmother took a ship from Freetown to Bathurst, as it was then, and that's how come my father was born here. That was back in 1920. You know, so when we became independent and we had all these kind of the big talk about what we wanted to do and what we wanted to be, about seizing our own destiny, it's as if we didn't think beyond the narrow borders that had been imposed on us by these colonialists. We kind of let that restrict our minds. We should have thought broader. Otherwise, what's different?
Exactly. So, Mr. Toure, I mean, is Africa liberated?
Yeah, thank you. You see, often when we think or talk about Africa, we narrow the history to its colonial past. The reality is Africa existed before all this. It is undoubtedly the root of civilization and had organized many years before any part of the world. Colonialism came in as, you know, a very unfortunate situation which obviously succeeded what we had through the transatlantic slave trade. Now, few Africans at the time championed a narrative. First, it was an engagement such as this through conversations and literary work or scholarly, supporting it through writings, newspaper articles, books, and the list goes on. And all of whom have sacrificed a great time and great resources to champion a discussion that gave us the Nkrumahs that subsequently fought for Africa's liberation. So yes, there was a time we really did had a part. And if we had defined liberation as that time of attaining a political independence, for a country to say we are independent and therefore we act on our own reality and on our own laws, there was a time that this continent looks like that. And that is the likes of Nkrumah, the Nyereres, and all these individuals who had Sekou Touré's, who had such a great belief and fought to make sure that this was in place. But then there was another pause, because those who colonized this continent for that 100-year period never left. They had just changed the strategies. When they knew that the likes of Nkrumah and all these guys could be an obstacle to a continued exploitation of Africa's resources, but to equally to dominate what Africa's social fabrics has to look like, have changed in their strategies. And this was what gave rise to elitism and comparadors, as some economic writers would put it, because they were able to get a group of African elites to act on their behalf. And somebody put it even better, and that was J.J. Rawlins, that Africa liberated itself from its white colonialist, but has not done so with its own leaders. So independence is wide and liberation is wide. Thomas Sankara in the 80s puts it even more simpler by saying that we just need to look into our dining table, and when we look at the food we eat, then we can tell ourselves if imperialism is a reality or definitely something that we have gone beyond. So if you ask me if we are liberated, a straightforward answer would be no. Because liberation means economic power, economic freedom, food sovereignty, and independence, it also means being able to act politically and have a position without being interfered. Today, that is not the Africa we live in. Our day-to-day politics is dictated and is organized under the framework of ideologies that Africa do not own.
Well, it's good that you mentioned that, because I mean, fine, we can be independent by giving us ourselves to them, but you know, neo-colonialism, you know, you can still feel that in the system.
And as Usman rightly says, I mean, you look back to when somebody like Patrice Lumumba made a speech saying that actually Congo had nothing to thank Belgium for. His fellow Africans who were in the audience, Kasavubu and other people like that, they were incensed. They said he had insulted the King of Belgium. He spoke nothing but the truth. Congo had nothing to thank Belgium for. And we saw what happened when, you know, Mobutu Sese Seko took over. He was very much a puppet of the West, and he did their bidding. And so, you know, people like him, of course, the West were very happy to receive him and thank him because of what he was doing to his own people. But in Africa, I think there's a danger, if we keep talking about this liberation, that we don't exchange one set of colonialists for another, because we seem to be rushing from the West and the former colonizers towards Russia and China. They don't come here because they are our friends. They come here because we have mineral resources that they want.
Sure.
They don't come here and do stuff for free. They have a self-interest. We should start acting in our own African self-interest, and we don't do that enough.
No.
You know, and until and unless we start doing that, then we know we're just exchanging one set of colonizers for another different name, and that is the kind of thing that we have to think. Well, you know, and Usman just very quickly mentioned about we existed before the Europeans came, and I can tell you this. You know, I hear the nonsense about the Europeans brought Christianity to Africa. Why is it that the oldest churches are found in Ethiopia, not in Europe? There's not a single church in Europe that's as older than the ones in Ethiopia. So they didn't bring it to us. You know, they brought it back, you could say, but they didn't bring it to Africa. Africa had it before. So, you know, let's think about what we want for Africa. Let's go beyond, as he said, the talk and into the action, because for us ordinary Africans, that is what will matter, not the fine words.
In fact, sometimes I ask, why are we even talking about Africa liberation?
No, we should talk about it because we should not give up on the idea. You know, we need to define what it is we mean by that. And as Osman said, if you ask the question that you asked, the shortest answer is no. But he then went to extrapolate, and he went further, and he explained why it is that you can't say, yes, we're there yet. But it doesn't mean we should not aspire to it. We can look back and we can see the mistakes that have been made, and we can try and correct them.
But how fast are we going?
No.
I mean, towards that, that's another thing.
You know, the slave trade endured for over 300 years. We're talking about countries that have only become independent since 1957, 58, 1960s, and so on. So we're not talking, none of the former colonized countries had its independence for even 100 years. So let's not rush. You know, some things take time.
Progress has been made.
Progress has been made, and we tend to brush it under the carpet as if nothing has happened. But it's been slow.
It's been slow, but
because it's the nature of human beings. We want things today.
No.
You know, we don't want to wait till tomorrow because you think I might not be here tomorrow.
Mr. Toure, why is economic independence very important?
Yeah, thank you so much. So just picking up from Ade, you see, what happened post-independent Africa was a big mistake in many contexts, especially on the economic side. Like, while in Africa we were busy building on, you know, ideologies, building on political and, you know, democratic systems, even though it wasn't the reality for most African countries. put the Asian countries on the same context, who were on the same lane with us back in the 60s. Countries like Ghana even, mobilized resources for China. Countries like Nigeria were doing the same thing in the early 60s. Today, you don't even compare. Like, you compare maybe cities in China and the entire Africa in terms of GDP. Now, what that tells us is we do not get the economic policies right. And the big mistake was those that led us to independence, some of them believe that a continuation of a relationship with the West in shaping our economy would help liberate Africa financially, and this doesn't work because all the economic structures that supports or that we subscribe to today as Africans were not built with the framework of developing the African continent. So number one, we have an economy that is not based on adding value to the resources that we have, but more of like an extract one. Almost in every African coast that has mineral resources, they do not transform them into something. One example, Niger's uranium powers almost 70% of France's electricity.
Exactly.
At a time when Niger do not have 15% electricity coverage. Now, Congo, for instance, where you can step on minerals while walking to school, you go to schools that teaches you nothing about adding values to those resources over the time. Now, you have companies that through foundations and other agencies would come to Africa in the form of aids, in the form of donation, but yet they're extracting minerals that even with paying tax alone can boost the African economy. Now, to move swiftly onto the Asian tigers, for instance, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore had the belief that building an economic that is sustainable was to be done on power and people. First, development is not just infrastructure, but the minds, the people, the skills that makes it sustainable, but things that equally pays them. So in that context, we got it wrong. And countries like the Gambia is a reality. I mean, you gain independence for over 30 years, you don't even have a university, and schools were not present, like at least having enough schools that provide education for the vulnerable, those coming from disadvantaged background, the electricity coverage, and we had a whole 22 years of a similar trend. At the time, when Saudi Arabia took less than 40 years to be where they are by just believing and working on the minerals and making the world works for them using their own resources. I mean, Dubai or UAE have done a similar trend. We've seen what oil have benefited countries in the Gulf. But if you come to Africa, for instance, there are a few countries that are exceptional. When you go to Botswana, Mauritius, Rwanda, for instance, I mean, these are countries that, 30 years ago, they were like, the Gambia was in 1994. How comes they're where they are today and, we're still on the same debate? So there is a whole issue on our economic policies, and this has been a deliberate action by the people who lead, because none of them have taken the difficult route of implementing policies that might be very difficult to do, but obviously delivers the liberation that is desired, but would rather go onto the Bretton Woods institutions, which were formed to cripple your own economy at the expense of poor individuals, to just keep borrowing funds, borrowing money, mismanaging it. We every day wake up to a scandal in a tiny country like the Gambia. And what this means is, unless and until we work on restructuring the whole system, prioritizing economic policies that yield dividends, but also policies that build capacities of individuals, and again, things that pays them. The farmer everywhere else outside of the African continent is a rich individual. Why is the farmer the poorest in Africa? So these are things that we need to really interrogate if we really want to move forward.
Yes, Lord.
I mean, for me, Nigeria is one of the most scandalous examples. You mentioned the Gulf countries. We're all celebrating 2 years ago when Dangote opened an oil refinery in Nigeria. Go to the Gulf states. See how long ago they've had oil refineries in their own countries. I know Nigerians. There's a guy called Wale Tinubu. He's a billionaire now. When I interviewed him about 15 years ago, he made his first million shipping oil from Nigeria to be refined and then brought back as petrol. And he went on to become a billionaire. So many people were getting rich doing that they never even had the concept of, hey, hang on, this oil is produced here. Why don't we refine it here and then send out the finished product? We live in the Gambia. We send out our peanuts. They get refined, and then I go to a supermarket here and I buy peanut butter. In a jar, and it says packaged in come on.
And you
I
have
should
it
not
here.
be able to get any imported peanut butter in this country. That's how basic the things are that we should be doing or that we should have done. Oil from Nigeria, gold, diamonds. Sierra Leone, 1930, they discovered diamonds. Go and see if anybody's polishing diamonds in Sierra Leone. We send it all out as completely unrefined. And you could go across the length of Africa. So when you talk about economic independence, those are the things we need to do if we're serious about. That's why I'm intrigued to see what Senegal does with its oil. You know, if all they do is drill and send it out, then you're back to square one.
It's useless then.
Yeah.
Lolly?
Yes, so I'll just ask, what is the way forward for Africa? Because you've mentioned the challenges, you know, highlighted issues that are really making us stagnant. What do you think we need to do?
I mean, Usman has kind of mentioned some of the countries that we should look to who are doing things differently and they're succeeding. And I think if we took those as an example, I mean, you guys get fed up of me always mentioning our neighbor Cabo Verde.
Yeah,
But if you look at Cabo Verde, the fact that ECOWAS has decided that its renewable energy office will be based in Cabo Verde is for a reason. This year, 2025, Cabo Verde will become the first country in the world, not in Africa, West Africa, in the world, to be 100% reliant on renewable energy. Wind and solar will power all their electricity. Nobody else is even at 40%, never mind 100%. Why don't we look to that? The same sun they have, we have. The wind power. Let's harness it. But we go to Addis Ababa and we talk all this fancy stuff, and there are reams and reams of papers that are produced. We need to get beyond the talk, Lolly.
Absolutely.
If you want to know, into the action. When do we get the action? You know, 2063 is this vision that, you know, African Union has. You know, are we on course to hit that? Unless we start doing things, we start collaborating, learning from each other. You know, like, you know, as I said, ECOWAS, they've done the right thing. They've placed the Renewable Energy Office in Praia in Cabo Verde because they say, okay, these people have done it. How can we in the rest of West Africa do it? And then the rest of Africa will learn from that and say, okay, these guys are doing it, let's doing it. But in terms of integration, hey.
Yeah, because sometimes I will see our parliamentarians will go on study tour, other institutes, they will go on study tour to other countries.
What do they go and study?
And what if they come back, how do they really implement?
I do have, I mean, amazing stories of these study tours.
Yeah.
And I always say, as a frequent traveler, you meet Gambian representative, government official, almost every part of the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes for me is, you know, what are we really learning? Like, you know, and sometimes things are very easy. Like nowadays, you don't even have to go to Rwanda to know how certain things are done. And you don't have to always be in South Africa or be, you know, in Mauritius or Botswana to know how some of these things are handled. But even if they do, you know, with those expensive trips, you know, what is the gain? I don't often say this. And again, you know, going back on your question, I think, you know, one of the things that we really need to consider in our modern day and time is the very foundation of relevant skills and education that is required to propel a national development. Now, in the case of the Gambia, where we have like a whole national development 2018, 2021, then 2022, 2027, Tesito, you know, all these things bringing it together, but there is not a single entity that monitors the implementation of such a national development. Now, it's as if we're a country with zero vision. If I should go here and interview people in the public that what is the Gambia's vision in 2029 or 2030, I might not get the answer.
No.
And deliberately, in fact, if I should ask people what is the theme for Gambia's next election 2026, I am not going to have an answer. So how serious are we about national development, about liberation that we are talking about?
Well, we had the foreign minister at the Mansakunda. I think he was quite angry when somebody said we don't have a foreign policy. And he went on to try and explain our foreign policy. I was surprised that none of the journalists took him to task because he said, you know, we're non-aligned. So when we discussed on Week in Review, sorry to cut in there, I said to Mboj, how can you say you're non-aligned when we will deal with China but not with Taiwan? We will deal with Russia but not with Ukraine. You're not non-aligned. You are aligned.
Right, absolutely.
So that the pretense is not even there, you know. So as you say, we have all these policies, but nobody's knitting them together or monitoring that they actually fit in with each other. Otherwise, they just kind of, one policy sits there, another sits there, another sits there, and another sits there. Where is the uniformity to make sure that it is a coherent policy, one that makes sense? That is what is missing.
That is what is missing.
Absolutely. And again, you know, development has to be coordinated. Today, for some reason, a country like the Gambia, we all know we should not be importing food, for instance. But you can boldly say as a Gambian, the most incompetent ministry in this country is agricultural ministry.
Yes.
And that's where you have all the educated elites with all the PhDs.
In agriculture.
In agriculture, and the list goes on. Maybe mismatch with the minister himself. But then, you know, it all comes down to the fact that we have to be deliberate about what we want. And we have to be ready to pay a price for certain things. Going back on, you know, the question of the way forward, education has to be the bedrock, and we must have a deliberate industrial policy. This country do not have industrial policy. It is merely on paper. If you walk into what they call an industrial estate, all you'll find is stores and warehouse. We are not industrializing. And in this modern day and time, we are talking about an economy that is going to be pretty much in the future, built on data and on genetics. Now, we are there at a time when not only is the masses prepared for such a future, but again, who centralizes this data? A quick example will be China-Africa Think Tank Forum came in the early 2000s, and the belief was Chinese scholars and African scholars will come together and do research in Africa, in China, to guide a relationship that will influence our trade policies, our economic policies, our foreign affairs policies. 25 years down the line, China is Africa's biggest trading partner, and there is not any house that you will enter and not find Chinese product reflect. Now, if you go on the other side, what do you get? So the easiest business for any Chinese individual is to just get into Africa with no complexity. All they need to do, have money, buy resources, put it in a container, ship to China. Period.
Wow.
Very simple businesses. So if we are really serious about ourselves, this is the very beginning. We must learn to add value to the little resources that we have. We must be ready to also build skills that are going to be able to carry these young people beyond just seeking job to job creators, beyond just, you know, mere employees or whatsoever, to being entrepreneurs, because future economies is not going to be built by government. Government only need to be an enabler. Today, you know, if your economy or government expenditure is more than 50% of your national or, you know, GDP, then there's a problem. There's a problem, because That's not the role of a government to do. It should be within the private sector. So how do we now build capacity among young entrepreneurs? I am very much passionate about this thing because it affects me directly on a daily basis. If you should ask GRA, for instance, that report on government revenues and everything every year, what is their relationship with all these shopkeepers around KM, Serekunda, and the list goes on, their only answers is the money they're collecting from them. That's the only relation. Do you want to know how well they're doing? Do you have a policy that covers them? Can they report for certain things, certain needs, and the list goes on? You don't have to do it because it's not your mandate. But how do you help them? Because it's going to help you earn more as an entity.
So on that note, I mean, talking about GRA and shopkeepers, shopkeepers protest against street vendors in Serekunda market. I mean, shopkeepers in Serekunda market are staging a protest against street vendors, conducting holiday sales, locally known as wanter, around the market area. They argue that these vendors block access to their shops, leading to a significant loss in sales.
So this takes us back to the proverb. This is the cat and the mouse not coming together. They are competing, obviously, and I think in the Gambia, this wanter thing I noticed when I came here. It's very much a kind of tradition now, and those shopkeepers protesting, they might as well forget it. That is so established now as a tradition that it's not going to go away just and because they get upset.
For a period of time, as a matter of time, some day, like 10 days, it's just for 10 days.
It's a short, you've got 350 odd days for the rest of the year to sell your stuff. Let them sell their stuff for 10 days. But of course, the reason they're upset is because it actually is a 10 days that could be quite crucial for the shopkeepers, because if the option is to buy it cheaper from these people who are unregulated, they're not paying rates, they're not paying taxes, then you are paying rates, you're paying taxes, you're probably even paying rent for where your shop is. You have all those overheads, and these people don't. So they can sell it.
Only pay for the store. They only pay for the table.
The council should move the wanter to a specific location, maybe
people gravitate towards where they know
because
they will
it will not
I
be
was
fair
going to engage
I
have an appointment with the market manager, Bodunjai. We were going to talk about this because last year for Corridor it doesn't happen because
and also this year they had a wanter at the stadium.
Yes.
Because they sent us a request. We weren't able to cover it, sadly. Otherwise, we would have had the footage. Because that was a case of the council trying to move these people away from the areas where shopkeepers are, where they're competing with shopkeepers. You announce to the public, go to the stadium, all these stalls are there, and you can go and you can buy from them there, and it kind of takes it away. But as I said, sadly, we weren't able to cover it. But that would have been, I mean, just very, very quickly on another related point that Usman was making. About data. So it's only this year, for example, that the National Agricultural Research Institute, NARI, will be digitizing over close to 1,000 dissertations and master's theses on agriculture in the Gambia. Things that if you wanted to read any of that, you'd have to physically go to them. And the reason I know this is because I was asked to get involved with it. It's a big project. It's going to cost maybe about $6 or $7 million to digitize all of that. But it means that you can sit anywhere in the world, anywhere in the Gambia, and say, okay, what studies have been done by people? At the moment, you don't know, because there's no data that lists all of the studies. And so you have, in fact, what I noticed when I went through is because people didn't have that electronic database, people were repeating studies that other people had done 5, 10, 15 years before. Now, if you know somebody's already done it, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You could go to that and say, oh, this is what they found out, okay, or what's different from what they found out. So eventually, it's going to take quite a while, but the process is starting this year.
Exactly. So finally, Mr. Toure, what should the youth do, I mean, for the future of Africa?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we need to do everything. it's enough to be on the waiting room. As a constant traveler that have passed through the route from West Africa to Addis and to the Gulf, often in every flight you will see young women in their 20s leaving one African country to another into the Gulf. And some of these individuals, they have undergraduate degree certificate, they have acquired skills, either hairdressers or any kind of discipline. But they are narrowing down the dream of being community change maker or entrepreneur or working with dignity in their own countries to being caretaker in the Gulf. Now, these are people who should be our engineers, doctors, nurses, and the list goes on. So for me, Africa's future is not a future that we can run away from. So taking up that responsibility is now on all of us. For its economy, for its politics, for its social well-being, we must build interest. And not just in a conversation, but taking the genuine action that will give us that liberation and that freedom. But lastly, I do not subscribe to a holiday for this day. For me, we could have all been, able to report at work just like we're all doing here, but there's nothing to celebrate.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yes.
I was a youth once, so if my advice to the youth is, about getting involved. And again, I go back to what Usman was saying about the importance of data and the importance of digitization, for example. So I'm glad to see things like WISDOM, Women in STEM, here in the Gambia really taking off and really becoming embedded and growing. But when I say get involved, I don't mean get into a political party and do what people did in the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years. We've seen that that hasn't worked. What I would say is that learn from the lessons. Don't say, I want to be like X, Y, and Z who went before me. And in many cases, many people, I remember having an argument once with somebody in Sierra Leone. He said, why did your father stop being a successful lawyer and get into politics? Is it because he wants to steal? I mean, I was seriously insulted. But he had a point, because he felt that that was why people got into politics. And I had to point out to him, my father doesn't even own his own house. If he was stealing, he'd own several. But, get involved, because, unless you take the reins of your country's future into your own hands, then other people will be making the decisions for you, both within your country and without, outside of your country. So, get serious about it. And please, it's not just about going on social media and making a noise. Get involved in your communities. Can you make a change within your community, within your village, within your town, within the city, the region, the district you come from? What can you do to make a change that will impact?
Thank you, Mr. Ade Drame. Thank you, Usman Toure, for coming on the program and sharing your view with us.
Always
Africa
good to hear from
Liberation
Usman.
Day.
He always has some very good insights.
Yeah, and we hope to engage you more in the future, Mr. Toure.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
If he will stay around long enough.
Yes.
He's never here.
No, I'm going to be around.
All right. We would
For some
definitely
time,
love to be engaging you time to time. Yes. So, Lolly,
Thank you.
It was a pleasure sharing the same platform with you.
Yeah, we'll take a short break, and after the break, then we head to the last segment of this program. We'll be back.
It's back again with its easy-to-use, secure and convenient mobile app that allows you to carry out all your transactions. No matter where you are or what time it is, you can always access your funds. With the new Q Money app, you can cash in and out, buy credit, buy Q Power, shop, make payments, and so much more. You can also send Q Money, pay bills, receive international remittances, and transfer cash to others. Just download the app from your Play Store or App Store and get started. For more information, call customer care on 133. Q Money, Sinu Calpe. We innovate, others follow.
Qcell mooy suñu boss. Qcell mooy suñu boss. Qcell mooy suñu boss. Grrr, sorop. Go, Ebeda full network, Suda Tili, QCell. Ni lafta Diamala Wati Jamala Mune Diata, QCell. Most reliable network, Jumala Geta Wati, QCell. Wo quality man yon soda jam, Pona Manke QCell. Hanibe Wuloni Farola Kono Walante Bebakona Jala Fayola, network Ose Taria, QCell, Sunibus. Yofinjaka in the 3G, New Delu Taxi 4G Plus, and now we bring you 5G. 5G. First and only 5G provider. Itella follow Adi Doron Nesa Keno. Gambia Bela Nyon Tower Fele QCell. Ko Fasunta Buka Busi QCell. Itella Moldi Milka Kukutol. Nati Gambia QCell made a lori la Kiliano Yele Imanina Amanda Wala Itella quality dealer Daddy Ma Itelle Silo Wala Wodol Mume Be Kenoma. QCell Sunibus QCell Sunibus QCell Sunibus QCell Sunibus. Connection of a Bambandi QCell Sunibus. QCell most innovative QCell Sunibus.
Kiumoni arti webi na fitoragol no yawi te non kadi no moƴƴi kiumoni a wawa wadde piiji ɗin fow kala ko wonɗa wattu kala a wawa e hendade mbuuɗi maɗin e o kiumoni app kesson a wawa e nattinde mbuuɗi ma ɗum yaltina soda crédit soda kiw paba soda ko falaɗa te non kadi wawa hen yoɓude himɓe e ko heewi ina wawi kadi nuldude kiumoni yoɓa bilji maɗin te non kadi hendoɗa mbuuɗi ko yaasi nulda himɓe kadi mbuuɗi fi nafitoragol ɗum no weeɓi yahu ka play store ma ɗum ka app store fi wawa fuɗɗade fi heɓugol hen ko laaɓi noddu kiwmoni customer care e 133 kiwmoni suñu kalpe minen udditi lawol ngol si woɓɓe jokki kiwmoni e murundananne koteke anilañimmo.
Thank you very much for joining us. You're watching QTV this morning. I am Ibrahim Balde, and on this platform I'm with Loli M. Kamara.
Yes.
Loli, now we will head to the last segment of this program.
Okay,
And
I can't wait.
Yes, we have Fatoumata Jawara, Gender and Health Minister at UTG. And of course, we also have Youth for Bar Information and Public Relation Officer. And we'll be talking about the Students for Change. UTG marks, No Tobacco and Women Health Day. Gentlemen and lady, it's
welcome.
good to have you on this platform.
Thank you.
So we would like to hear all about it.
Yes.
Yes.
So how are you people feeling? It's public holiday, and you people are here, you know. So let's start with Fatoumata. Let's talk about this activity, No to Tobacco.
Is it the first time you commemorate such? Is the first year or?
Yeah, this is the first time we are celebrating such event in UTG SSA. So it is organized by the Gender and Health Ministry in collaboration with the 20th Executive Council. And we feel like it is very important to talk about women's health. As we said, like we are the future of this, youths are the future of this country, and women also are the backbone of the country. So that being the case, I think it's very important to celebrate women's health and also empower youths and say no to tobacco. Normally, World No Tobacco Day is celebrated on the 31st of May by the World Health Organization, and then the International Women's Health Day, it's usually celebrated on 28th of May, which is supposed to be on Wednesday. So, but we cannot have two events in different days. That's why we decided to join both of them together to have them on the 31st. And we have special guests for this event. We are collaborating with the Red the Gambia and then Women in STEM. But Women in STEM are the ones sponsoring this event that we are about to host. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the things that we expect to see on that day? Because you say women and health, what are some of the issues that you will talk about in raising awareness?
We will be having a presentation and awareness section from a representative from Red the Gambia, which is Omar, and we will also have two representatives from Women in STEM. And we will also have a gender person from gender to talk about gender disparity and other issues. and we will have a nurse to elaborate on women's things that are affecting women's health. Again, we will have some drama sections to raise awareness and spoken words. Then we will have a poetry as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So, Mr. Ba, once again, you are welcome on this platform. Let's talk about why tobacco. Why you left the marijuana and the skunk Gina bars?
Thank you very much, and good morning to all our wonderful viewers. My name is Yusuf Aba, and I'm here in the capacity of an Information and Communications Officer of the University of the Gambia Science Students Association. And it's an honor to be on this program to talk about these two very global concerns, which is tobacco and women's health. Like my colleague just said, this year's event or this activity is a dual call to action, meaning we are combining two things together, which is saying no to tobacco and also celebrating women's health. Women's health is something that's very, very important. And if you look at the youth, the population of this country, a large percentage constitutes the youth, which is also a high percentage when it comes to the University of the Gambia. A high percentage is of youths are being enrolled. And part of the menace that we face as a country is the abuse of tobacco and nicotine products. So this year's theme of this World No Tobacco Day started in 1987. It was first celebrated in 1987, April 7th. It used to be celebrated in April 7th. Then from 1988, then the date was changed from April 7th to May 31st. Globally, it is observed. And part of the things or the initiatives behind this celebration of this day to unmask the appeal, which is the theme for this year, meaning this tobacco marketing, there are a lot of strategies that they use that to deceive people into buying their products. So this year's theme, every year there is always a specific theme advocated to this day, and this year's theme is unmasking the appeal, meaning these strategies that they use, we want to unmask them to the general public. And this is what, the reason behind the celebration of this day, and we look forward to having a very successful one, because we will be having a lot of experts in this area, and we expect them to come and deliver to our utmost satisfaction. Thank you.
Yes,
yes. How are you collaborating with the Ministry of Health, because they're also trying to emphasize that tobacco, the unit under the Ministry of Health, Tobacco Control, they're also out, sensitizing the public and trying to visit shopkeepers. How are you collaborating with the ministry?
Okay, like I said, this whole tobacco thing was initiated by the World Health Organization. So it becomes a main concern, or the Ministry of Health automatically has to be involved. But the main organization that we will be collaborating with when it comes to this activity is Red the Gambia. Red the Gambia, they are an organization which is, their main focus is on tobacco and drug usage. So having them there, people who have been advocating for this, because one of the things that they do as an institution is to raise awareness about the use of tobacco. So they are the main partners for now. But for the Ministry of Health, we are also looking forward, because right now we have a few days to go to, before this event actually happens. So we are calling on more partners, people who will be willing to help, people who are concerned about the well-being of the youth of this country, people who are concerned about eradicating tobacco and its usage, to come and partner with us. Because this action is a collective responsibility, and we cannot do it alone as science students. But in UTG SSA, or the University of the Gambia Science Students Association, our motto is science for development. And science for development, we are always there to ensure that we champion change and we champion development. So we call on institutions that are specialists in this area to come and partner with us. Together we will be able to celebrate this, and together it will be a success. Because once we raise awareness about this, because if you look at this country, a lot of, especially in the area of tobacco, a huge section of the population, because right now we see young people from the age of 13 to 17 being involved in tobacco. So this becomes a collective responsibility, not only for us, the science students, but also it's also part of the goals of the Ministry of Health, or their objectives, to ensure that they eradicate the use of tobacco. So having people who are willing to, us as youths, willing to organize such initiatives to ensure that we take the lead, we will also be very happy to have them collaborate with us, to have them work with us to ensure that this becomes a success.
Okay, so I'd like to ask again, So after commemorating this event, what is going to happen? Are you just going to stop there? Because you are an organization, a group that is really focused on healthcare. So what are some of the things that you will keep doing to ensure that your campaign is really met?
Okay. All right.
Try to come into that. Thank you for that question. Like we are not only going to stop at celebrating the event. Currently, right now, the event will hold at Faraba, the university campus, and it is going to be sensitization to general student body. But again, like he said, the UTG Science Students Association, our motto is science for development. Normally, we do have a science week that we celebrate, and on that science week, we do have exhibition day. And then the Gender and Health Ministry will normally have a health screening on that day for students. And also, we have a day that we go out for school outreach. In this school outreach, we will raise awareness. We still continue and raise awareness to the general student body. We also have a nationwide tour in which this year also, I would love that we still continue with this campaign to the up area. Yeah, we will still continue doing it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add on to what she was saying, this event, our target audience automatically is the University of the Gambia students, because they will be the ones that will be present, even though the applications are open, or it is open. The event is open for anyone to attend. Yeah, invitations are open, but the target audience is the science students or the students of the University of the Gambia. But this is something that is going to be a continued process. After this event, we will ensure that in our future initiatives, because awareness will be raised, we will have experts that will be with us, and these experts will talk about the importance of this event, the importance of advocating for women's health, and the importance of saying no to tobacco. So once we are much enlightened about these things, and we go out there as science students, as she said, we go on community outreach, we will be able to extend this information to other people, other young people who are out there. We also do have a nationwide tour every summer. That nationwide tour will go around the country, and part of the things we always advocate for is the health of the youth. And having this thing called no tobacco also, for us to speak about it, it is also going to sensitize the public about the effects of tobacco and about the harmful things that tobacco brings into our society.
So are you collaborating with any institution, any government body or private body?
Yeah, so far we have two institutions that we are collaborating with, and one of them is Women in STEM, that is WISTEM the Gambia, which is which part of their objectives is to bring mentorship to mentor students about having gender equality and eradicating gender disparities. So another one is also Raid the Gambia, which is also another institution, like I said, which was established in 1993. And Raid the Gambia is also an institution that is also specialized on drugs and eradicating the abuse of drugs. So these are two main institutions that we so far have been confirmed, but like I said, we have few more days to the event, and we are also looking forward and exploring for more collaborations.
When
to
is
have
the
more
event?
institutions.
31st.
Yeah, it's going to be 31st of May at Faraba Banta campus.
At Faraba campus.
Yeah, Faraba Banta campus.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
Finally, what do you have before we close this segment?
And yes, to that final question, how do you ensure that policy makers, decision makers, really adhere to the call? Because I think with these days like this, like commemorating days, are call to action to remind people that these are really important. And how do you ensure that you work with policy makers to make sure that they implement certain things for women's health?
Okay. All right, you can
come in there. Part of this, we will be having public health officers there, and those people are normally part of the policy making. In fact, we will have a speaker from the public health department who will be there to talk about tobacco and women's health. So obviously from there they will take over, and we are optimistic that they will also try to add on to these policies, especially those who are addicted to tobacco, because in the Gambia we always see that we are raising awareness about tobacco, but how do we deal with people who are addicted to it is always a question to ask, and normally these people are already suffering about this issue. I think a policy or something, they should try and come up with something to deal with these people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just to add on to what she said, like this is a collective responsibility, but when it comes to this kind of events, part of the things that are very important is branding the event and ensuring that the advertisement reaches its target. and ensure that people are aware about this event. Because once you gather people, you expect you to have an audience that will come and listen to them. So this is why we are also working on ensuring that there is proper branding, because I'm here, I'm currently in the capacity of the Information and Communications Minister, which is my personal responsibility.
Okay.
We will ensure that we advertise this event properly to ensure that people are aware of it. People will come and listen to these experts. People will come and listen to these people who are very much knowledgeable when it comes to the area of these health issues and no to tobacco. Because this is, like you say, it's a call to action and it's a collective responsibility. So we all have to come together to ensure that this becomes a collective success, because a success in eradicating tobacco is a success for the nation. Absolutely. And a success for the nation is a success for the youth.
Success for everybody.
For a success for everybody.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady, for coming on QTV this morning. We hope it will be a successful one, and we wish you all the best of luck. And you will come back here again after the event to tell us how the event transpired.
Yeah, the impact,
yes.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Lolly, this is all we have for today. We'll be back here tomorrow again.
With who? I have other plans for tomorrow.
Yeah, so
but it
viewers,
was so good to be with you.
Exactly. Today. Until then, enjoy the rest of our programs. Bye for now.